a program specialist with TWC. She's been working with adult education programs across the state of Texas for about 5 years. She's a graduate of the University of North Texas with an extensive background in criminal justice, and she has over 21 plus years experience at administratively providing services, collaborating resources, training, and promoting reentry initiatives for the justice-involved individuals. So I want to welcome Veronica to our Workforce Wednesday today.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I am Veronica Moore. I'm the program specialist, again, here with the Texas Workforce Commission, Adult Education and Literacy. And we're going to be talking about serving justice-involved individuals. Just some things about getting started as you're working to collaborate with other partners and add on to your services for adult education and literacy. Just a quick overview, we'll be talking about the reentry education framework. We'll be looking at adult education, some statistics from 2018-2019 program year, the exclusionary reasons that fall underneath those that are justice involved or under reentry and corrections. We'll also look at why you should serve students in corrections. We'll talk about some challenges in serving students in corrections, as well as best practices. And then when you're getting started, who currently are participating or could be your collaborating partners in this adventure. So there's also going to be some resources, again, for who to contact as well. So on corrections reentry, first want to look at the corrections reentry education model. And underneath the Department of Education, there's this corrections reentry education model or framework. And what it does is it looks at different points of entry within a correctional or justice involved individual. And what's the framework, or what are the things that need to be provided in order to support that individual as they're transitioning? So we'll be talking about this model and what is included in that model. So first of all, we want to talk about your reentry education facility transition. So this is looking at how your justice involved individuals come in and out, really pertaining to your secure facilities as well. So as they're transitioning in and out of your correctional facilities, as well as you're transitioning out of your community-based programs. And then we're going to talk about and we're going to discuss your educational services. So this is a very imperative point and very necessary point in this model, because this looks at your ESL, your HSC, your training classes, your post-secondary classes that you're providing even within the correctional facility. So as some of you may or may not know, that there are transitional classes, there are training components, there are post-secondary educational trainings that are currently going on in a lot of your facilities around the state of Texas. And that could be HVAC classes, that could be horticultural classes. There's classes that they are taking and trainings that they're taking in your CDL. So there's classes that are currently going on and trainings that are currently going on that AEL may be able to support their participants, and we'll talk about that as we move forward. Then as we're looking at this transition, you guys have to look at what the entry point and the exit point. So where are my justice involved individuals coming in at? Are they coming in at correctional facilities, which are the secure facilities, your prisons, your county jails and all that? Or are they coming in, or are you providing services in a community-based, maybe it's a halfway house, maybe it's a treatment facility, these community-based programs. Maybe they've just recently been released from the county facility, or they're on probation as well. So we're looking at these transitions from entry point, and you're looking at when your participants are coming in and what door they're coming into. Then you have your strategic partners. These are the individuals and the agencies that you're collaborating with in order to get things done. That could be working with TDCJ or a lot of our AEL providers, and some of you may be working with your local county jail facilities to provide HSC ESL services or even reentry correctional services for those individuals. So these are basically your partnerships, and they're very important to establish those partnerships in this model in order to ensure that the model is sound and that everyone is in agreement and understands everyone else's responsibility. Next, I want you guys to understand the program infrastructure, just basically the capacity, your program's capacity to provide certain correctional services, as well as the resources and evaluations and policies of not only the organization that you're working with, but also the requirements that are imposed on you, on AEL providers who are underneath the TWC funding. So you want to ensure that you understand and that you're speaking the same language, that you understand their goals and their outcomes, and they also in return will understand, and that they understand your goals and your outcomes. So as you're partnering with different agencies and departments, that's a conversation that you also want to be in the loop of and want to talk to them about is, you know, what is what is your capacity? What is their capacity? What's their goal? What's their focus? What's their mission? Again, our mission is to reduce recidivism as a whole, but there may be additional missions and services that they're also wanting to accomplish with this model. So we just need to understand and make sure that we're on the same page and things are transparent as we're partnering with different correctional or different agencies, whether it's secure or community-based. And then you want to also look within this model, they talk about the sustainability. How do you sustain this model? How do you sustain your partnership? What does that look like? Your infrastructure, what is the capacity? Is it growing? Is it not? What are some things that you as a AEL provider, as well as your collaborating partners, are going to need built to sustain it? And when we talk about sustainability, we also talk about a continuous improvement plan, meaning it's not a one and done. It's something that has to be revisited periodically, every 6 months, once a year, sometimes every quarter, depending on what the services that you're providing to those individuals. And again, the ultimate goal is to look at long-term employment and living wages that also in occupations that help reduce recidivism. The reason why this model was implemented is to help individuals that were just as involved transition into the community so they can be self-sustaining and prevent them from returning back into the correctional system. And so as we're looking at the reentry toolkit, there's this framework, and I just wanted to play this for you guys quickly.
More than 700,000 adults exit a prison each year, and tens of thousands more leave local correctional facilities. Many lack workforce skills, jobs, and other critical assistance that will help them find a path back to a successful life in their communities. Research shows that education and training can reduce the chance that they'll commit another crime and be reincarcerated. Helping these adults create productive lives means safer communities. But adults in the correction system struggle to get the education and training they need because the educational services offered in correctional facilities are often disconnected from community-based education programs. The Reentry Education Framework is designed to help reentry education providers create a seamless path for their students that include education, training, and other support services. It starts with a solid program infrastructure, including sufficient resources and dedicated staff. Partners such as correctional facilities and employers are essential to the reentry education continuum. Evidence-based education services, including career paths, are the heart of the framework, and reentry education providers need to help their students plan for transition. Finally, reentry education programs must be sustainable. The Reentry Education Toolkit is designed to help providers adapt the framework to fit their contexts and needs. The toolkit offers guidelines, resources, and tools, including self-assessments and planning worksheets to help you implement and sustain an education continuum. Also available in the toolkit is a report that shares more in-depth information and lessons learned. View and use the toolkit and report at links.ed.gov/reentryed. Helping adults in the correction system successfully rejoin society not only improves their lives, but makes society safer, which is in everyone's interest.
And that's the education reentry framework and a part of the toolkit as well. And in that toolkit, you guys will be able to find different resources and ideas on how to best implement your reentry education program as well. Are there any questions at this time?
Someone is asking for the link. Shirley, I placed it in the chat. It's right, links.ed.gov/reentryed.
And so as we look at adult education and literacy in Texas and Texas correctional facilities, again, we have worked with a number of...
So while Veronica is bringing up her PowerPoint, I just want to remind everybody that we have a corrections and reentry community of practice in the PD portal where you can access many other resources. And I believe the reentry document, the toolkit is in there also. So there's a lot of resources. You can ask questions.
Are you seeing it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yay.
You're on slide. Okay, very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And so I'll start with where we were, adult education literacy, just some general statistics. And of those offenders, you know, you had 145,019 offenders in Texas prisons. And of those 68,371 of those offenders were provided adult education services, meaning about 47% of those individuals were provided educational services. And again, this is through TDCJ and Wyndham data. And then on average, when you're looking at offenders or individuals that are just as involved, most of them complete only 10.4 years of schooling. And so they fall into the population that AEL will particularly serve as far as participants. And then those that don't have, that do have a high school diploma, they often have substantial needs as far as remediation in English and in math as well. So when you're looking at the statistics, and you know, TDCJ also underneath Wyndham, they also provide TABE testing for their participants. So that's an NRS approved test that AEL also uses, or that you're able to use. So if you're partnering with those individuals, another thing to be mindful of is what type of testing or assessments are they using, and do they mimic or match what our requirements are or what you guys can utilize as far as programming. And then when you look at that there are over 64,000 Texas offenders that are released annually. And when we talk about release, they're released through TDCJ. So TDCJ is the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And of those 64,000, about 1/3 of those individuals do not require supervision. So meaning many of them are being released without supervision requirements. So they're not on parole. They're getting discharged out of the system. And in Texas, incarcerated first-time community college students require mediation. So of those students that may have gotten post-secondary education or working to get post-secondary education, those students often require some type of remediation, whether it be in math, reading, or language skills. And next, I want to just provide some adult education and literacy statewide statistics from 2018 to 2019. And what we'll be looking at is just basic enrollments of students in correctional and reentry programs, as well as, talking about educational functioning levels and their gains and how they made gains. So in 2018-2019 program year, AEL served 2,293 justice involved individuals under AEL services. And what this consists of is, this is collaborated with the AEL basic corrections, transitions corrections, IET corrections, as well as reentry corrections. And of those that were post-tested, so of those 2,293, of those that were post-tested, there was a 65% gain. Now, one thing, and we'll talk about this later on, is we'll talk about how when you're serving justice involved individuals in institutions or county jails, some of the challenges that may come with that. So next I wanted to talk about just some general outcomes and exclusionary reasons. So when you're working with programs that are serving justice involved individuals, maybe your county, your state, or your federal, you can do federal facilities as well. You want to also be aware of things that will exclude them from some of your outcome-based measures. And so on here, we're going to talk about some of those exclusions when it comes to serving justice-involved individuals. So as a reminder, all justice-involved individuals that are coded in any type of corrections and served with AEL funds will be counted in exit-based measure. The only way that they will not be counted in these exit-based measure is if there's an exclusionary reason applied for that individual and team. And so we're talking about, first of all, let's talk about exit-based measures. What are exit-based measures? These are the credential attainment, your employed enroll second quarter, and employed enroll second through fourth quarter. And so these are measures that are post-exit measures. So when a participant leaves or is no longer participating in your program, these are federal measures that our AEL providers are held to. And again, your justice involved, or some of those justice involved individuals will fall into these exclusionary rules that will pull them out of those measures. So when we're looking at those measures, another measure is a measurable skills gain, meaning you guys know there's multiple measurable skills gains that individuals in AEL programs can receive. These are called the basic education MSGs. Again, these have to be acquired from all participants, meaning anyone with 12 plus hours within that program year has to have a measurable skills gain within that program year. And those measurable skills gains are, which we have them based on type A, 1A, 1B, and 2. Those are achievement of a post-secondary or progress assess or pre and post-test assessment, meaning making a gain on a pre or post test. Also post-secondary enrollment, again within the same year, you are served with AEL and you exit and go into post-secondary enrollment within that same program year. That would be considered a measurable skills gain. And then your type 2 is your high school equivalency achievement, meaning I came into AEL, I didn't have an HSC, and then within that same program year, I received my high school equivalency. Those are your basic, what we call basic educational MSGs. All of those have to be acquired within the same program year, and that's for all participants. So this would include your justice involved individuals. And then we have your workforce training, integrated education and training measurable skills gains. These are for your individuals that are in IET. So as you noted on the previous slide, when we talked about those numbers and those individuals that were included in that 2293, we had some IET corrections individuals. Well, if they're in an IET, those individuals, in addition to getting your basic education MSG, at least one of those, they would also need to get at least one of the type 3 through 5 measurable skills gains, which is your post-secondary transcript or report card, your progress milestone, or your skills progression. And again, as a reminder, all AEL participants, including correctional participants, are required to have an MSG, basic measurable skills gain, per program year, and a workforce MSG if they are in an IET. So please review, your IET requirements. You can find this in AEL Letter 0118, Change 1. When we're looking at exclusionary reasons, you guys are probably wondering, where do we find those? You find those in teams. And so when you go to the team system and you're looking at different programs, you will find the exclusionary reasons underneath the profile for that participant. So let's talk about what an exclusionary reason is. And I wanted to put the exclusionary reason for incarcerated justice involved individuals first, So you know that because we're talking about reentry and we're talking about justice involved individuals on this session, that these are the exclusionary reasons that will help pull those out of the exit-based measures. So these are for participants who are unable to come to class and are going to exit due to he or she has become incarcerated, meaning they started off in your program as a regular participant, and now through some means or forms, you find out that they're incarcerated. You want to also ensure that you have the documentation as far as where did you get that source information from. You want to make sure you have that included in that participant's file for monitoring purposes. Then you have if they were incarcerated at program entry, meaning I have a program, a HSE class at the county jail, and those participants were incarcerated at program entry and they remain incarcerated when we get through with the class. So maybe the class is a 4-month or 5-month class, and those participants have completed that class and worked on their goals, and they're no longer participating in AEL services at that county jail, but they're still incarcerated. So that's where you would go into teams and you would be able, underneath their profile, to put that exclusionary reason. Just some other exclusionary reasons. You have the medical, you have the deceased. If they are deceased, you have if they're in the National Guards or the Reserve, and then there's the foster care. And these exclusionary reasons, again, have to be applied to individuals via teams, data entry, and with supporting documentation. So when you're looking at these exclusionary reasons, I wanted to also provide this chart. Basically just explains the term exclusionary reason, and just a simple explanation of who may fall into those categories. And some of these will apply to some of your regular participants, but again, for the sake of reentry, we're going to be really focusing on your becoming an institutionalized or currently a criminal offender. So when you're looking at exclusionary determination, and in the photo, this is the basic, just a snapshot of what that exclusionary reason looks like in teams and where you would find that on that profile. So it's under the periods of participation, and then the exclusionary reason sits off to the right-hand side. Remember, your exclusionary reasons must be recorded in teams prior to 90 days exit. You must use the POP report. You can use the POP report to determine when the 90-day mark is. You have the start date of the exclusionary reason must be later than the last service date. And then also note that entering contact time when an exclusionary reason is applied or has been applied will result in a system error. And you will have to choose a new date range for when the exclusionary reason occurred. So teams will give you an error if there's an exclusionary reason that has already been applied and you're entering that individual into a class and they're getting contact time. It's just a safeguard to ensure that, are you sure that this person is going to get these hours, or this person has an exclusionary reason already applied. Then let's talk about, how does an exclusionary reason help your performance? So entering an exclusionary reason in teams helps performance by excluding the individual from the outcome-based measure. Credential rate, your employed enrolled quarter 2, employed enrolled quarter 3 through 4. And so please review, again, AEL letter 0118 change 1. It does not, and remember, your exclusionary reasons do not exclude the individual from a measurable skills gain, okay? So your MSGs, they still have to have that within the program year. Note, if you look at your exclusionary reason, you should be able to really connect just to common themes. They're here to prevent, or they're all to prevent or hinder employment, meaning once someone exits, does it hinder or prevent them from being employed? And again, that chart has the explanation of those exclusionary reasons. Do we have any questions at this time?
I know that was a lot of information to cover. So if you could type your questions in the chat, that would be great. Tara says, I teach an ongoing class at a county jail. How does this work for me?
So within that county jail, if you're providing AEL services within the county jails, first of all of your AEL county jail participants need to be coded underneath either basic corrections, transitions corrections, reentry corrections, or IET corrections. And so once they're coded underneath that, when you're looking at those individuals and they stop out or drop out, if they're still incarcerated in that county facility, but they're no longer getting services, then you want to have the exclusionary reason applied to those individuals. Now, if those individuals are being released into the community, then they have opportunity to still participate in AEL services via community. Like maybe they were once at your class at the county, and now they're in another class, physical or virtual, in the community. So they would not, those that have exited and been released into the community, they don't fit into this exclusionary reason. It's only if they remain incarcerated or they become incarcerated.
She said, thank you. I lost audio and wasn't sure that was just about them leaving. I thought it was about gains.
And
So
we
have, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. We wanted to provide the gains only to ensure that everyone understands that even if you serve justice involved individuals in your programs, they're still counted in your measures as far as your measurable skills gain. So if I'm serving in a county facility and my individuals get 12 or more hours, they're counted as a participant. So they'll be counted in your denominator as a participant. They're also, you want to work to give those individuals the hours that they need so they can be post-tested, they can get their HSE, or they can go into post-secondary, depending on how your program is set up, so they can get a measurable skills gain within that same program year. And so what you'll find is you'll find some individuals that are participating, they get 12 hours or 20 hours, they're counted as a participant in your program, but then they're counting against you in your gain. And we'll talk about that in some of the challenges as well.
Okay, I think that was it. There was another question, but she said you answered it. She said, we have students enrolled in our regular AEL class that have been on probation and parole. Will there apply to these students as well?
Exclusionary reasons won't apply to your probation and parole. No, that won't apply. But as far as reentry and being just as involved, it depends on those individuals and where the time frame from when they were released.
Okay, and then Evangelina says, so incarcerated participants don't have an exclusionary option. And I think you just said that, right?
Incarcerated participants do have an exclusionary option. That is the exclusionary option, that they are currently incarcerated. So when we're looking at why should we provide services to justice involved individuals or students, let's just look at some importance of serving corrections populations. When we look at some statistics, 95% of incarcerated individuals will return home. 70% of American prisoners have not completed a high school diploma. So that's a reason why we want to serve and provide services for these individuals. This also helps reduce recidivism by as much as 43%. Also, there's a 400% return on investment, meaning for every dollar spent, it's $4 saved. So for every dollar spent in education, in reentry, or in correctional facilities and services, you save $4. And sometimes those numbers can go up to a 5-to-1. So 4-to-1, a 5-to-1 ratio. So a 400 or 500% return on investment is pretty great. Okay, so that's another reason why we want to serve, and it's important to serve as well. And to assist with meeting the reentry model goal. Okay, there is a goal, a common goal with AEL and a common goal with a corrections reentry as well as a correctional facility is to reduce recidivism. And so we're both entities are working collaboratively with different partners to help reduce recidivism and also help individuals go into sustaining and living wages. So why serve in corrections population and how does it benefit the program? We've talked about, and again, a lot of these things may be shifting. It's pre-COVID, right? So a lot of programs, this is all pre-COVID. So a lot of programs pre-COVID looked at justice involved individuals and working with facilities in state jails because of the easement of recruiting. You know, you work with the individual or the warden or the, you know, supervising entity of that program. And as far as recruiting, a lot of times that recruitment is already built in to that system. So that's not something that AEL necessarily has to do themselves. You may have your county jail facility say, hey, I have, you know, 600 individuals. I want to start an adult education program within our facility. So that was the ease of recruitment. When you're also looking at students are motivated to learn and improve their educational levels and employabilities. They have time to think. They don't have the outside world to deal with, so they may have more time to think about how to improve themselves. So this is another, important benefit is that at that time in their life, they're able to really stop and sit and possibly focus on ways that they can improve themselves and their employability skills. There's also a high rate of class attendance. When we look at the data, there's high rates of class attendance, which transfers to subsequently higher educational and functioning levels and gains, multiple gains as well. And a lot of times, you have, when you're looking at class attendance, things are already built in. So it may be built into what we would call a 16-hour schedule. Like your class may be already built in to that correctional facility schedule and in that time frame. And they're pretty consistent as well. And then meeting and serving those most in need, which is the goal of both AEL and corrections. So we're both wanting to facilitate and to meet and serve those that are most in need. And we understand, again, if there's a 400 to 500% return on investment for educational services within reentry or correctional services, that says a lot about the needs and what those needs are and what we can do to help as well. When we're talking about serving, again, it comes with a lot of challenges, and I don't want to downplay any of the challenges that may come with working with justice involved or serving justice involved individuals. So I just wanted to give you guys, kind of like an intro to maybe some of the challenges that you may initially face. So when you're looking at challenges, you're looking at teachers. So we're looking at demographic areas where units and requirements for access, you want to find the right fit as far as instructors that teach in correctional facilities and with justice involved individuals, okay? Because you may be faced with different learning styles. So with different learning styles, that instructor will need different teaching styles as well. You also want to be transient. The population is often transient, especially if you're looking at the county jails, where, we'll hear, they're here 1 week and then they're gone the next. And so what we've asked is, to look at some, and when you're collaborating with these partners, talk to them about maybe a longer term unit or a longer term facility to where you'll be able to provide those services, as well as giving them transitional information for when they're released, where they can go to continue their services and their education with your AEL program, especially if it's county-based. If it's state-based, that's the same thing. It's collaborating with your state partners. AEL is throughout the state of Texas. So maybe it's an individual coming in from Austin Community College, but that's being served in an institution and they're going to be released to Dallas. But having that direct contact to help that individual transition and giving them that soft handoff is very important. Also, issues with unit security, locks down. What happens when a facility is locked down? What happens when there's no movement? Right now, we're all dealing with COVID. A lot of us are working remotely from home. What does that system look like, and how can we accommodate? Are there, technologies, which, that goes back to, there's often a lack of technology or the ability to incorporate technology in some of these correctional facilities, depending on where you are, your location, and what they already have built in as well. And then we have the unwillingness to cooperate by, multiple echelons of the unit or staff. Sometimes it's an informative things. Maybe if I don't know what the program's mission and goal is, you may get some feedback or some resistance from maybe the staff that work in that unit. So challenges of successful program implementation, again, your geographical location, areas of incarceration versus areas of home placement. We talked about that, soft handout, knowing not only your local programs and who they are, but also knowing your statewide programs and who are the AEL providers in your statewide program, which that can be found on the TCAL website as well. Aligning training and facilities to those recognized in the labor market. You guys know that things are changing. So when you have facility trainings and there's training going on in TDCJ, they do technical trainings. But how does that align to when someone is transitioning out? Maybe they only got one part of that HVAC training and they need another part. How can AEL help continue that education and help that individual be more successful as they're transitioning out? Lack of support as students are transitioning. This is probably one of the biggest issues with the transitioning from incarceration to community or home placement, is the disconnect between, as they're transitioning, where do they go? Who do they link up with? Who is that person? And not necessarily saying you should go to, TWC, but saying this is a person that you should talk to. AEL being the initiator of that, maybe doing a phone call initially with TWC or the AEL provider that they're going to and saying, hey, I have Johnny X coming to you and this is the information we have. And that will help individuals be more comfortable, because it's really about navigating systems as far as helping them navigate those systems during that transition. Then you want to look at your fluid populations. A lot of times this is more with the county facilities, because the population, like you say, are here one day and they're gone the next. But also students being moved or released. So those were some other challenges. And as I discussed earlier, you want to kind of not remove those challenges because they are there, but what are some ways that you can help those individuals, either providing a resource as they transition or they are released, or finding a way to serve individuals for a longer time frame as well. And then post-testing rate reductions as students leave facilities without being tested. So as I discussed earlier, if they are a participant, meaning they have 12 or more hours, and they leave the facility and there's no gain, then it reports negatively on your measurable skills gain. So what can we do to assist in that? Again, maybe linking with community partners, maybe ahead of time linking with your collaborating partners and figuring out when individuals are going to leave, how long they're going to be there, so you can do some planning. Lack of collaboration and efforts, when it comes to, knowledge and needs of services. Again, lack of technology, we talked about that, and safety. Again, safety is paramount when you're talking about corrections individuals and facilities. So that's really an important thing for them. Finding out and having the resources to find programs in corrections. Sometimes they may not know what's available and what they can participate in as they're transitioning out, or where those programs are. The right instructors for the class. Again, you will need to vet your instructors or your teachers to ensure that they are the right fit. And then your program variations from facility to facility. I want to reiterate that it is not a one-size-fit-all thing when you're working for and working with your justice involved individuals or agencies. So what the county may allow may not be what the state facility or the prison facility or the federal facilities allow. So you really have to have those conversations up front on that. And then just like there's challenges, there's best practices. So you vet your instructors to ensure that they are the correct fit. You ensure that instructors have maybe multiple teaching styles and best to assist the students. You want to also look at your target population. Maybe you want to target a population with a facility program, maybe their minimum length of stay is 6 months or longer, and that's how you're gonna facilitate your program or talk to that individual collaborating partner on how you can best serve. Asking about population turnover, initial conversations. Those are things that you wanna talk about at the beginning before you implement classes. Like, what's your population turnover? How can we best assist your program as well as get the outcomes that your participants are looking for? Then timely testing to capture student gains, communication with the students for release and referral dates, alternatives for students studying when their facilities have no movement or closed. We talked about the ability now that we're working remotely with some distance learning curriculum and some distance learning software as far as paper-based distance learning, which some providers actually use in a time where there's stop movement or no movement with facilities. So understanding what those are and how you guys can utilize those are very important as well. And then setting goals to assist students to reach post-testing requirements. We as humans are goal orientated, and so when we set goals, we tend to meet those goals. So working with those students to reach their goal is really important. And then looking at target enrollment, are they going to be in career pathways? Is it going to be a transition class? Is this an IET class? Is this a part of the reentry? Are we going to include some reentry, which is a service? Are we going to include some reentry services within this HSC class, this ESL class, this IET class? Or is it going to be just a basic ABE, HSC, ESL, or one of those classes? And when you're looking at collaborating services with others, you want open and frequent communication with the facility and the staff members. And so you want your partners to have open and transparent communications with each other. You want to be transparent with them about your services and what you can provide, your capacity to provide it, and how often that can be provided based on your staffing levels and all of that. You also want to establish roles and expectations up front. You want your MOUs, your letters of agreements, and all of that to say who's doing what and who's responsible for what up front, if at all possible. And knowing who and when students are being released, maybe setting up services prior to release, maybe a part of your transitioning plan with those individuals or that facility, depending on, do they have a case manager that currently does that? Who do I need to link with? Who's a part of that, that correctional system makeup as well. And then your support services. When we're looking at support services, you guys have TCAL. We do have a community of practice for corrections. We have resources. We're working currently to build out some resources underneath the correctional reentry corrections tab. You have your workforce solutions offices for support services, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, and they have, again, different divisions within their agency. You want to work with employers. You want to work with housing facilities, because, you know, we look at justice involved individuals in housing, employment, and transportation are major barriers that they often face as they're transitioning out. Providing healthcare and treatment as well, some of those best practices. Do we have any questions?
Sorry, we did have one, and Shirley says this is a lot of information. Do you think we'll get the PowerPoint or some type of PDF for this training? And Shirley, I was going to type this in there, but an accessible document of this presentation will be provided when the session is placed in the PD portal for others to view. So there will be an accessible document. It will not be the PowerPoint, but it will be the content of the PowerPoint.
And just again, when you're getting started and looking at your newer facilities, remember your point of contacts, being able to sell the unit for, you know, what you're best suited for, your purpose, what you can bring to the table, and getting the reentry conversation started as early as possible. And then open up your conversations beyond traditional HSC services, maybe a discussion in surrounding reentry or IET models or transitions or workforce preparation activities. Those are some additional things that you can have discussions over. And then I just wanted to provide you guys with some resources. Texas Juvenile Justice Department, this is a juvenile corrections facilities, and they actually have tasked their case managers as individuals are transitioning out of their facilities and into their halfway houses and community-based programming to reach out to our AEL programs throughout the state. So you may be getting some calls from different individuals in that as well. This is just some information of where those locations are and these contacts as well, with those of you have any questions about those, the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. And they have specialists, they have reentry specialists and all of that. And then you want to look at your local juvenile detention facilities as well. We want to look at Texas Department of Criminal Justice. If in your area there's TDCJ facilities, whether it's state or state operated or prison facilities. I also sent some information on this. And then you have your parole and release or reentry divisions as well. And so I also provided you guys with some information to TDCJ parole division contacts. They have some regional areas. So if this is within your region, you can also utilize that. There's a reentry integration division as well with Ms. April Zamora, who leads that. And if you want to get your AEL contact information on that list of that reentry hotline or with this department, you can reach out to April Zamora as well. And again, just wanting to ask you guys to check with your local and county jails and your probation facilities for, you know, their needs and what they need and what you can provide to them. And just remember, you know, as far as a reentry framework, you know, your adults have on how, you know, correction students fare. You know, we do very well as far as, you know, 65%. Yes, we can do better. A lot of that has to do with transitioning and the fluidness of the population, exclusionary reasons, and just, you know, keeping the doors of communication open as far as your capacity for services and utilizing the resources that you have, whether it's AEL, TWC, TCall. There's a lot in the facilities. There's a lot of individuals in our AEL, our AEL umbrella, and our providers that are doing some great work in reentry. You have DCCD underneath the Dallas Workforce Boards that are doing well. You have some individuals with Lee College that are doing really well in providing those services as well. Victoria, and you have Howard College Permian Basin. Again, there's a lot of individuals, Region 9, that, you know, we're doing virtual classes within their county jail, things that allow. So there's some people within our AEL family that are doing really good things, and a way to reach out to them. We're hoping to maybe collaborate a list in the future to get things done. So you'll have these resources, you know, at your fingertips as well. And that's all that I have. Thank you guys so much for the work that you're doing out there. and the impact that you're having as well.
Thank you, Veronica. Great information. Like someone said, that's a lot of information. We appreciate it. And Veronica has listed her, and I've placed it in the chat, her name and her email, if you want to get a hold of her. Thank you, everybody.